It was 5 in the morning. I had volunteered at a Native American reservation, and it was my final day, and I wanted to get an early jump, for the ride home. So I packed up my stuff. I hit the road while it was still dark. And as I drove out of town, I saw something that I'll never forget. Many very young children, they were wandering the streets. No supervision. It was 5 in the morning. Little kids just wandering. And, really not even teenagers. There was older kids carrying babies, but no teenagers or adults anywhere. And, really it was heartbreaking. Someone had mentioned to me that this is what happened, but I never did see it at night. But basically, the children are abandoned at night because the parents were off getting drunk. And when I heard that, I thought maybe it was exaggerated or taken out of context. But as I was driving out of town at 5 a.m., there were many young children alone in the streets. And this was an Indian reservation where everything was provided. Free housing, free utilities, free food, free health care, free dental. Anything they needed. But yet this reservation, it had the highest rate of diabetes in the nation, despite having free nutrition programs. They had terrible dental issues everywhere you looked, but they had free dental care. Adults were begging for money at the gas station so they could buy more alcohol, and then they would drink until they're so drunk that they couldn't even find their way home, leaving their children to fend for themselves. Giving them resources and money didn't help them. It actually hurt them. I'm Brian Hill. I've owned multiple businesses for over 20 years. And this is a chapter, it's going to challenge the way you think about generosity, about charity, and helping others. This is chapter 25, Panhandlers on the Side of the Road. Generosity needs to be emphasized in a business journey, especially as a business owner. Not necessarily being generous with the guy with the cardboard sign, at the side of the road, but just being generous in general, having an attitude toward others. Wallace, was it Wallace Waddles? I think it was. Anyways, he had a book, Science of Getting Rich, great book. And he said, the poor do not need charity. They need inspiration. Charity only sends them a loaf of bread to keep them alive in their wretchedness, or it gives them entertainment to make them forget. If you want to help the poor, demonstrate to them that they can become rich. Prove it by getting rich yourself. This quote does not say encourage just handing money to people. For some reason, people, I guess, handing someone money who is bad with money, it really only amplifies their misery in the long run. I've known some guys that had tried to clean up their lives, and then there was always that one well-meaning good Samaritan that would, I want to bless him and give him some money, and they would end up drugged up, lying in the ditch, waking up next to a new girl, having more pain and regrets than they had before. Money for most of these people is not the answer. Really, many of them miss, say, the joy of work. And I do mean joy, because if you earn something, you appreciate it more, and you're really less likely to minimize the utility of it. When things are received easily, they're usually not appreciated or even taken care of. And, if you don't believe me, just go to your inner city. There's projects down there, and everyone who's provided a roof, a roof over their head, or utilities paid, plenty of food. Those buildings, usually they're built brand new, very nice, but quickly they're vandalized, torn up, trash laying around everywhere. It's not even a safe neighborhood. And, I'm going to kick it up a notch and go back to with the Indian reservation. If you have a chance to go to an Indian reservation to volunteer, I'd recommend it. The Indians there, man, they're great people. But sadly, they're provided everything, or at least in this one reservation, and they really had no reason to live. And most of them died young. It was from bad health or an overdose or even suicide. Everything was provided for them. And the reservation I went to had the highest rate of diabetes in the nation, even though they had free nutrition programs. And they had free dental care, but man, you never seen so many people with messed up teeth. They were given everything they needed to survive, leaving them with nothing to do but really to sit around and hang out at the gas station and beg for money so they can go inside and buy more alcohol. And then they would go and get drunk, basically until they couldn't find their way back home, leaving their little children to defend for themselves. So as I drove out of town that morning at 5, and there was young children wandering in the streets. Even say you went through a neighborhood in the daytime and you seen 8-year-olds and under just wandering the streets, you'd kind of, well, that's kind of weird. But it was dark out. Many very young children. It was really heartbreaking. Given resources to these Indians didn't help them. It hurt them. And business owners need to be the most generous group out there, but make sure your money is helping people and not hurting them. It's easy to feel good about yourself as you really close your eyes and hand money to that sad face panhandler that's always on the same street corner day after day. Then you drive off in your nice car, feeling good about yourself, grinning ear to ear because you did a good deed. But it shouldn't be about you feeling good. It should be about helping others. Help them to become who they were created to be. Sometimes giving money hurts them, and it doesn't help them. I think about those kids a lot, but they're actually adults now because it was a while ago. And they're probably repeating the same cycle they saw their parents do, unless they changed their life around. So 5 a.m, little kids wandering, because their parents drank themselves into oblivion the night before. Parents who had everything provided for them: housing, food, health care. They had nothing to live for. And that's what happens when you remove the need to work. They lost their ability to contribute to society. You just don't remove struggle. You really remove dignity. You remove purpose. And Wallace Wattles was right. The poor do not need charity. They need inspiration. They need to see that they can become more. And the best way to show them is to prove it yourself by getting rich, by building something that demonstrates that work has value and that they have value. So here's what I've learned about generosity. Especially as a business owner. At first, be generous, but be very wise. Not all giving helps. Some giving hurts. And before you hand someone money, ask yourself, is this helping them become who they were created to be? Or is it just making me feel good about myself? Is it just a tax deduction? Second, give them a way to earn and not just receive. It's nice to receive $100, but what if someone showed you how to make $100 anytime you wanted it? Having the ability to work and earn for yourself, it brings more joy to the individual than just, hand it to them. You're just helping them, thrust them out of poverty. And once they're out of poverty, maybe you help someone else. They would help someone else to break the poverty chain in their family. So, and third, be generous, not just with money, but with your time, knowledge, wisdom, experience. Money's the easiest thing to give, but a lot of times it's the least helpful. Your time, your wisdom, your experience, that's what can really change lives. And that's what inspires people to become more. I'm not saying don't give to panhandlers, which, maybe I am, but, I'm not saying don't support charities, but I'm saying be wise. Check where your money is going. Does the organization have so much overhead that only a small percentage helps people? There's a lot of charities out there that, like 5% of your money goes to help people. The rest of it's for CEO wages and overhead and stuff like that. So, are you helping people become all that they were created to be? Or are you just keeping them alive in their wretchedness? This is chapter 25 from my book, Business is a Journey, Not a Destination, and this journey is your life. If this challenged you, hit the like button, subscribe. I'll be releasing all chapters of my book right here. In the next chapter, we're going to be talking about what a bucket of chicken and consuming content has in common. So be generous, but be wise. Help people become who they're created to be. Thanks for watching.